Jake Morrison stared at the red marks covering his test paper, another failing grade. He crumpled the paper and shoved it into his bag before anyone could see the large F written at the top. Around him, his classmates were celebrating their perfect scores and comparing their answers with excited chatter. The classroom at Galactic Academy buzzed with alien voices speaking in dozens of different languages. Jake was the only human in advanced xenobiology, and probably the only one failing it too. He kept his head down as Dr. Vexstar, a tall Zilithian with silver skin and 4 arms, handed back the rest of the tests.
Excellent, wet, quince, kale,
Dr. Vexstar said, his voice carrying across the room. The Valerian Prince's test showed a perfect score as always. Kale looked over at Jake with a smug smile, his purple eyes gleaming with satisfaction. And Alex 9, another flawless performance, the professor continued, handing a test to the synthoid student. Alex 9's mechanical face showed no emotion, but the blue lights in his optical sensors blinked in what Jake had learned was the android. Equivalent of pleasure. Dr. Vexstar's silver face turned toward Jake's desk. "Mr. Morrison," he said, his tone dropping to barely disguise his disappointment, "perhaps you should consider transferring to a more suitable program. Basic agricultural studies might be more appropriate for someone of your capabilities." Classroom fell silent. Several alien students turned to stare at Jake, some with pity, others with barely hidden amusement. Jake felt his face grow hot with embarrassment, but he said nothing. He had learned long ago that arguing would only make things worse. "I will try harder, Professor," Jake said quietly, keeping his eyes fixed on his desk. Dr. Vexstar made a sound. That might have been a laugh. "Trying harder requires actual intelligence, Mr. Morrison. I fear you may be lacking in that department." The bell rang, saving Jake from having to respond. Students began packing their bags and filing out of the classroom. Jake took his time, waiting until most of them had left before standing up. "Hey, Jake," called a voice behind him. He turned to see Zeph approaching. His roommate was a crystalline, his body made of living crystal that sparkled with internal light. Despite being only 3 feet tall, Zeph was one of the smartest students in their year. "That was rough, buddy," Zeph said, his crystal face showing genuine concern. "Want me to help you study for the next test? We could go over the material tonight." Jake shouldered his bag and shook his head. "Thanks, but I don't think it would help. I'm just not smart enough for this place." They walked out of the classroom together, joining the stream of students in the hallway. The Galactic Academy was massive, with corridors that stretched for miles and ceilings so high they disappeared into shadows. Students of every imaginable species hurried between classes, their various forms of communication creating a constant background noise. "Don't say that," Zeph insisted, his crystalline feet clicking on the metal floor. "You got accepted here, just like the rest of us. They don't make mistakes with admissions." Jake wanted to tell his friend the truth, but he couldn't. Instead, he forced a smile. "Maybe you're right. I'll keep trying." They passed a group of upper-class students who were discussing some advanced theoretical physics problem. Jake caught fragments of their conversation about quantum tunneling and dimensional matrices. Without thinking, he began working through the problem in his head, immediately seeing 3 different solutions they hadn't considered. "Jake, you okay?" Zeph asked, noticing his friend had stopped walking. "Yeah, sorry, just thinking about something." Continued toward the dormitory section of the academy. As they walked, Jake caught sight of a familiar figure ahead. Lucy Chen, the only other human at the academy, was walking alone with her arms full of books. She was part of the diplomatic exchange program and one of the few people who treated Jake like a normal person. "I'll catch up with you later," Jake told Zeph, then hurried to catch up with Lucy. "Need help with those?" he asked, falling into step beside her. Lucy smiled gratefully. "Thanks, these Centaurian literature books weigh a ton." She handed him half of her load. "How did your test go today?" "No," Jake grimaced. "The usual. Dr. Vexstar suggested I switch to agricultural studies." "That's ridiculous," Lucy said, her voice sharp with anger. "You're twice as smart as any of those alien jerks. I've seen you work through problems that stump graduate students." Your voice down, Jake said, glancing around nervously. Someone might hear you. Dormitory building and took the elevator to the residential floors. The dormitories were designed to accommodate dozens of different species with varying gravity levels, atmospheric conditions, and temperature controls. The human section was small, tucked away in a corner of the massive complex. Jake, Lucy said, as they reached her door. How long are you going to keep this up? Pretending to be stupid isn't going to work forever. Jake handed her back the books and looked around to make sure no one was listening. Has to work. You know what happens if they find out the truth? Lucy's expression softened. Your father's plan made sense when you were a kid, but things are different now. The galaxy is changing. Not fast enough, Jake replied. Humans are still seen as primitive. If they knew what I was really capable of, it wouldn't make things better. It would make them afraid. Before Lucy could respond, Jake heard familiar voices coming down the hallway. Prince Kale and two of his Valerian friends were approaching, their tall forms casting long shadows. Look who it is, Kale said, his voice dripping with false friendliness. The Academy's favorite charity case. Jake tensed, but kept his expression neutral. Prince Kale. Kaled about your test today, Kale continued, stepping closer. Dr. Vexstar was telling everyone in the faculty lounge about your latest failure. He's starting to wonder if admitting humans was a mistake. Leave him alone, Kale, Lucy said, stepping protectively beside Jake. Kale's purple eyes shifted to her. Defending your fellow primitive, I see. How noble. He turned back to Jake. Tell me, Morrison, what exactly do you plan to do when they expel you? Go back to your little mud planet and farm vegetables? Jake's hands clenched into fists, but he forced himself to remain calm. I'll figure something out. I'm sure you will, Kale said with a laugh. Well, try not to bring down the Academy's reputation any further while you're here. The Valerians walked away, their laughter echoing down the hallway. Lucy put a hand on Jake's shoulder. You should have said something, she whispered. Jake shook his head. It's better this way. Let them think they've won. As he walked back to his own room, Jake reflected on the day's events. Tomorrow would bring another round of classes, more failed tests, and more humiliation. But he would endure it all, just as his father had taught him. The hardest battles, Colonel Morrison had always said, were won not by the strongest or the smartest, but by those who knew when to reveal their true strength. Jake just hoped he would recognize that moment when it came. Jake Morrison sat in his small dormitory room, staring at the wall screen that displayed his failing grades. Mathematics, F quantum physics, F advanced chemistry, F the list went on and on. Each red letter a carefully planned failure, he heard. Footsteps in the hallway, and quickly switched the screen to show a basic study program. Pretending to struggle with simple equations, Zeph walked in, his crystal body dim with exhaustion. The crystalline had spent the evening in the advanced study hall, working on problems that most students found impossible. Still studying? Zeph asked, noticing Jake hunched over his desk. Maybe we should take a break. You've been at this for hours. Jake glanced at his roommate and felt a pang of guilt. Zeph genuinely cared about helping him, but Jake couldn't risk showing his real abilities. Yeah, maybe you're right. This stuff is just too hard for me. Zeph's crystal face showed concern. Jake, I've been thinking. Maybe if we approach the problems differently, humans think in ways that are different from the rest of us, that could be an advantage. I don't think so, Jake said, closing his study materials. I'm just not cut out for this level of education. Maybe Prince Kale is right. Maybe I should go back to Earth. After Zeph fell asleep, his crystal body growing dim and quiet. Jake waited another hour before carefully opening his real study materials. Hidden beneath his mattress was a small device that looked like a standard tablet, but contained his actual work. His father had given it to him before he left Earth, along with strict instructions about keeping his abilities secret. Jake activated the device, and his screen filled with complex equations and theories that would make his professors jealous. These were his real notes, his actual understanding of the subjects he pretended to fail. In the margins, he'd written solutions to problems that the Academy's greatest minds had been working on for decades. He pulled up his analysis of temporal mechanics. It's a subject so advanced that only graduate students were allowed to study it. Jake had not only mastered the basic concepts, but had identified three major flaws in the current theoretical framework. His corrections could revolutionize space travel, but he kept them locked away in his hidden files. A soft knock on his door made him quickly hide the device. "Jake," Lucy's voice whispered through the door. "Are you awake?" Jake opened the door to find Lucy standing in the hallway, wearing her sleeping clothes and looking worried. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Can I come in? I need to talk to someone." Let her in, making sure the hallway was empty before closing the door. Lucy sat on his desk chair while Jake perched on the edge of his bed. "I got a message from my father today," Lucy said quietly. "He's worried about both of us. The diplomatic corps is getting pressure from the Galactic Council about human students at the Academy." Jake felt his stomach tighten. "What kind of pressure?" "They're saying that humans aren't ready for advanced education, that we're taking spots away from more deserving species." Lucio's voice was bitter. "Some council members want to end the human exchange program completely." "Maybe they're right," Jake said, hating himself for the words. "Maybe we don't belong here." Lucy stared at him. "You can't seriously believe that. Jake, I've seen your real work. Remember last month when you helped me with that diplomatic theory? Paper. You solved a problem in minutes that I'd been struggling with for weeks." Jake had made a mistake that day. Lucy had been crying over her assignment, and he couldn't bear to watch her suffer. He had given her just enough help to complete her work, but he had revealed more than he intended. "That was just luck," Jake said weakly. "It wasn't luck, and you know it." Lucy moved closer, lowering her voice to barely a whisper. "What are you really doing here? And don't lie to me. We're the only humans in this place, and we need to trust each other." Jake looked at his friend's concerned face and felt the weight of his secret pressing down on him. For months, he had carried this burden alone, pretending to be something he wasn't. The loneliness was crushing. "If I tell you," Jake said slowly, "you have to promise me that you'll never repeat it to anyone. Not your father, not the diplomatic corps, not anyone." Lucy nodded. "I promise." Jake retrieved his hidden device and activated it. Lucy's eyes widened as she saw the complex equations and theories filling the screen. "This is my real work," Jake said. "I understand everything they're teaching us. In fact, I understand most of it better than the professors do." Lucy scrolled through his notes, her expression changing from confusion to amazement to something close to fear. "Jake, these solutions. Some of these problems have been unsolved for centuries. How is this possible?" "My father trained me from childhood," Jake explained. "Colonel Ben Morrison isn't just a military strategist. He's one of the smartest people on Earth, and he saw what was coming. He knew that humans would eventually make contact with alien civilizations, and he wanted to prepare me for it. But why hide it? Why pretend to be failing?" Jake sat down heavily on his bed. "Because humans are still seen as a primitive species. We're tolerated, not respected. If the Galactic Council knew that a human could outthink their best minds, they wouldn't see it as progress. They would see it as a threat." Lucy was quiet for a long moment, still looking at his work. "Your father's strategy was to hide human intelligence until the right moment." "Exactly. Stay underestimated until it's time to reveal the truth. But that time hasn't come yet." "Jake, look at this equation here," Lucy said, pointing to a section of his notes. "This is about energy conversion, isn't it?" Jake nodded. "A more efficient way to convert stellar energy into usable power. The current galactic standard wastes about 60% of the energy in the conversion process. My method would reduce that waste to less than 5%. Do you realize what this means? This could solve the energy crisis that half the galaxy is facing." "I know," Jake said quietly. "But I can't share it. Not yet." Lucy closed the device and handed it back to him. "How many other humans are like you?" "I don't know. Father thinks there might be others, but we're scattered across different programs in different worlds. The plan is to stay hidden until humans have a stronger position in galactic politics. It could take decades. Maybe, or maybe something will happen that forces our hand sooner." Jake hid the device again and looked at Lucy. "Now you understand why I can't let anyone know the truth. Every day, I have to watch my classmates struggle with problems I could solve in my sleep. I have to let professors insult my intelligence and pretend that their criticism hurts." Lucy reached out and squeezed his hand. "Can't imagine how hard this must be for you." The hardest part is watching people suffer when I could help them. Last week I heard Dr. Vexstar talking about a research project that's been stalled for months. I could give him the solution right now, but I can't. Your father's plan makes sense, Lucy said, but it's asking a lot of you. Jake smiled sadly. He used to tell me that the greatest victories are won by those who know when to reveal their strength. The problem is knowing when that moment has arrived. Lucy stood up to leave. Jake, whatever happens, I'm glad I know the truth. You don't have to carry this alone anymore. After she left, Jake lay awake thinking about their conversation. Tomorrow he would go back to pretending to be the worst student in his class. He would submit another failing assignment and endure more humiliation. But now at least one person knew who he really was. He closed his eyes and tried to sleep, wondering how much longer he could maintain his disguise. In his dreams, he saw himself standing before the Galactic Council, finally free to show them what humans were truly capable of. But he also saw the fear in their eyes when they realized they had been wrong about his species all along. The emergency alarms began blaring at 3 in the morning. Jake woke up 2 red lights flashing in his dormitory room and Zeph's crystal body pulsing with bright, panicked light. "What's happening?" Jake asked, jumping out of bed and pulling on his clothes. "I don't know," Zeph replied, his voice shaking. "The emergency broadcast system is activating." Students poured out of their rooms into the hallways, speaking in dozens of different languages. The confusion was overwhelming as everyone tried to understand what was going on. Jake spotted Lucy pushing through the crowd and made his way over to her. "Do you know what's happening?" he asked. "The news feeds are saying we're under attack," Lucy said, her face pale. "Something called the Void Collective." Jake felt his blood run cold. He had read about the Void Collective in Classified. Earth's military reports that his father had shown him. They were a ruthless empire that consumed entire civilizations, taking their technology and resources while leaving nothing behind. Dr. Vexstar's voice came over the Academy's communication system. "All students report to the main assembly hall immediately. This is not a drill." The assembly hall was massive, designed to hold thousands of students from hundreds of different species. Jake and Lucy found seats near the back while Zeph joined a group of other crystallines. The noise was deafening as scared students called out to friends and teachers tried to maintain order. "Academy," Director Thane stepped onto the main platform. The elderly Eltarian's usual calm demeanor was gone, replaced by obvious worry. "Students, faculty, we face a grave situation. The Void Collective has launched a coordinated attack on our sector. They have already destroyed 3 research stations and are heading directly for the Academy." A wave of panic swept through the crowd. Some students began crying, others started making calls to their home worlds. Jake felt sick to his stomach as he realized what this meant. "Our defensive systems are online," Director Thane continued. "But preliminary scans show that the Void ships are using adaptive technology that learns from our attacks. Each time we strike them, they become more resistant to our weapons." Prince Kale stood up from his seat near the front. "Director, what about evacuation? Surely the Academy has emergency protocols." "We are too far from any safe systems," the director replied. "The nearest military base is 6 hours away at maximum speed. The Void Fleet will reach us in 2 hours." Alexnin's mechanical voice carried across the hall. "Director, request permission to access the Academy's central defense computer. My processing capabilities may be sufficient to create new attack patterns." "Permission granted, Alex9. We need every advantage we can get." Jake watched as the Academy's brightest students volunteered to help. The top students from every species offered their unique abilities to solve the crisis. Kale volunteered his strategic knowledge. A group of hive mind students offered their collective intelligence, and several other species contributed their special talents. "All advanced students report to Laboratory 7, Dr. Vexstar announced. "We need to work together to find a solution to the Void adaptive technology." Jake started to follow the crowd, but Lucy grabbed his arm. "Where are you going?" "To help," Jake said automatically. "Just think about this. If you go in there and fail to contribute, it's going to look suspicious. Everyone knows you're struggling in your classes." Jake stopped walking. She was right. If he went to help and couldn't offer anything useful, it would reinforce his image as the failing student. But if he solved the problem, his cover would be blown completely. They made their way to Laboratory 7 anyway, staying at the back of the room. The laboratory was filled with the Academy's most advanced equipment. Holographic displays showed the approaching Void Fleet, their black ships moving through space like living shadows. Dr. Vexstar began organizing the students into teams. Alex Neen, take the computational analysis team. Prince Kale, you lead the strategic planning group. Team leaders, we need solutions, and we need them fast. Jake watched as his classmates threw themselves into the work. Alex Nine's team ran thousands of attack simulations per minute, looking for patterns in the void defenses. Kale's group analyzed the enemy fleet formations, searching for weaknesses. Other teams worked on improving the Academy's weapons and shields. Status report, Director Thane said, entering the laboratory with several professors. The void ships are adapting faster than we anticipated, Alex 9 reported. Every defensive strategy we develop becomes useless within minutes. They seem to learn from each encounter and share that knowledge across their entire fleet. The strategic analysis is equally troubling, Prince Kale added. Their fleet formation suggests they're not just attacking randomly. They're targeting specific systems within the Academy. It's almost like they know our weaknesses. Jake felt his heart racing as he listened to the reports. He could see the patterns that his classmates were missing. The void adaptive technology wasn't just random learning. It followed biological principles, similar to evolution, but accelerated and shared across a network. More importantly, he could see the flaw in their system, the weakness that could be exploited. 15 minutes until the Void Fleet arrives, announced a professor monitoring the sensors. The panic in the room was growing. Students who had seemed confident minutes before now looked frightened and desperate. Jake watched Zeph's crystal body flickering with anxiety as his team's solutions failed one after another. We're running out of time, Dr. Vexstar said, his arms moving frantically as he coordinated between teams. Does anyone have any new ideas? Anything at all? Jake looked around the room at his classmates. These were some of the smartest beings in the galaxy, and they were failing. People were going to die because they couldn't solve this problem. The Academy, with all its thousands of students and faculty, would be destroyed. Lucy caught his eye. From across the room, she gave him a small nod, as if she knew what he was thinking. Jake said quietly, raising his hand. Dr. Vexstar didn't notice him at first. Sir, Jake said louder. The professor turned toward him with obvious irritation. Mr. Morrison, this is not the time for questions from struggling students. Please let the advanced students work. I think I might have an idea, Jake said, his voice carrying across the now quiet room. Several students laughed. Prince Kale shook his head in disbelief. The human thinks he can solve what we cannot? Jake, what are you doing? Zeph whispered, his crystal face showing confusion. Dr. Vexstar was about to dismiss Jake when Director Thane held up a hand. Let him speak. At this point, we need to consider every possibility. Jake took a deep breath. This was it. Once he spoke, there would be no going back. His carefully maintained disguise would be destroyed forever. But as he looked around the room at the frightened faces of his classmates, he realized that some things were more important than his father's plan. The void adaptive technology, Jake began, his voice steady despite his racing heart. It's not random adaptation. It's following evolutionary principles. But they've made a crucial mistake. The room fell completely silent. Every eye was focused on the human student who had never contributed anything useful to any class discussion. 10 minutes until contact, the sensor operator announced. Jake looked at Lucy one more time. Seeing the understanding in her eyes, she knew what this moment meant, what he was about to sacrifice. But she also knew, as he did, that this was the moment his father had trained him for. The moment when hiding his strength would cause more harm than revealing it. Dr. Vexstar, Jake said, his voice growing stronger. I need access to the central computer. I can stop them. The professor stared at him in shock. You. Mr. Morrison, this is hardly the time for jokes. I'm not joking, Jake replied. And I think you're about to discover that you've been very wrong about human intelligence. The countdown continued. 9 minutes. 8 minutes. Time was running out, and Jake Morrison was about to change everything. Dr. Vexstar stared at Jake Morrison in disbelief. Around the laboratory, students whispered and pointed at the human who had never passed a single test. Prince Kale laughed out loud, shaking his purple head. "This is ridiculous," Kale said. "We're wasting precious time listening to the Academy's worst student. 7 minutes until contact," the sensor operator called out. Director Thane stepped forward. "Mr. Morrison, I understand you want to help, but perhaps you should leave this to the advanced students." Jake felt every eye in the room watching him. His heart pounded, but his voice remained steady. "Director, with respect, the advanced students have been trying for over an hour. They're approaching this problem the wrong way. And you think you know better?" Dr. Vexstar asked, his silver face showing complete skepticism. "Yes, I do." The room erupted in angry voices. Students from a dozen species began arguing, some defending Jake's right to try, others calling it a waste of time. Through the chaos, Jake caught Lucy's eye. She was watching him with a mixture of pride and worry. "Enough," Director Thane shouted, his voice cutting through the noise. "Mr. Morrison, you have 2 minutes to explain your theory. If it makes sense, you can try. If not, you will leave this room immediately." Jake walked to the center of the laboratory. The holographic display showed the Void Fleet getting closer, their black ships like a spreading disease across space. He pointed to the tactical readout, showing their adaptive responses. "Look at the pattern," Jake said. "Every time we attack them, they adapt. But they're not just adapting randomly. They're following biological evolution principles, but accelerated through their network connection." Alex Neen's optical sensors focused on Jake. "That is a basic observation. We have already identified the evolutionary patterns." "The flaw," Jake replied. "In biological evolution, rapid adaptation comes with a cost. The faster a species evolves, the more unstable it becomes. The Void Collective has made their adaptation too fast." Dr. Vexstar crossed his forearms. "Even if that were true, how would that help us?" Jake moved to the computer console. "Because rapid evolution creates genetic bottlenecks. If we can identify the core adaptation algorithm, we can create a cascade failure that will turn their own evolution against them." 5 minutes until contact came the announcement. "This is insane," Prince Kale said. "We're going to die because we're listening to a human who can't even pass basic mathematics." Jake turned to face Kale directly. "I can pass basic mathematics, Prince. I can pass advanced mathematics too, and quantum physics, and molecular biology, and every other subject in this academy." The room fell silent. Jake continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. "I've been hiding my abilities because humans are still considered a primitive species. But I've been solving problems in my head that your professors have been struggling with for years." "Prove it," Dr. Vexstar said, his tone challenging. Jake moved to the main computer terminal. His fingers flew across the controls with practiced ease. Complex equations began appearing on the holographic displays, calculations that made several students gasp in recognition. 4 minutes until contact. "This is the Void Adaptation Matrix," Jake explained as he worked. "They're using quantum entangled learning across their fleet. Each ship shares adaptation information instantly with every other ship. The equations on the screen grew more complex." Jake's hands moved without hesitation, building layer upon layer of mathematical relationships. Students who had mocked him minutes before now watched in stunned silence. "The flaw is here," Jake said, highlighting a section of the display. "They've prioritized speed over stability. Their adaptation network is like a house built on sand. If we can create the right kind of feedback loop, the entire system will collapse." Alex 9 processed the calculations at maximum speed. "The mathematics are correct," he announced, his mechanical voice showing something like surprise. This approach could work. 3 minutes until contact. Jake's fingers continued dancing across the controls. He was no longer hiding his abilities, no longer pretending to be slow or confused. He worked with the confidence of someone who had been waiting his entire life for this moment. "I need to create a virus," Jake said. "Not a traditional computer virus, but something that mimics a beneficial adaptation." The void ships will think it's an improvement and integrate it into their systems. That's impossible, said a Centaurian student. Their security protocols would never allow foreign code. They will if they think it's their own evolution, Jake replied. He pulled up another screen showing the Void Fleet's communication patterns. Look at how they share information. They don't verify the source of adaptations. They just integrate anything that appears to improve their survival. Dr. Vexstar moved closer to the display, studying Jake's work. Mr. Morrison, these calculations. How long have you been capable of this level of analysis? Since I was 12, Jake answered without looking away from his work. 2 minutes until contact. The virus was taking shape on the screen. Jake built it to look exactly like a beneficial adaptation, something the void ships would eagerly accept. But hidden within its code was a recursive loop that would cause their adaptation matrix to collapse. It's ready, Jake announced. I need access to the Academy's main transmission array to deliver it. Director Thane nodded to the technicians. Give them full access. Jake's virus launched into space, racing toward the Void Fleet at the speed of light. On the tactical display, everyone could see the moment it reached the lead ships. The virus spread through their adaptation network like wildfire, each ship eagerly sharing what they thought was a superior evolution.
1 minute.
Until contact. 4. A moment, nothing seemed to happen. Void ships continued their approach, their weapons charging for the attack. Then, suddenly, chaos erupted across their fleet. What's happening? Director Thane asked. Jake smiled for the first time in months. Their adaptation matrix is cascading into failure. Each ship is trying to evolve in a different direction simultaneously. Their systems can't handle the contradictory information. On the display, the void ships began to slow, then stopped completely. Their formations broke apart as individual vessels lost coordination with the fleet. Several ships actually began moving away from the Academy, their navigation systems confused by the conflicting adaptation signals. 30 seconds until... Wait, the sensor operator said, his voice filled with amazement. The Void Fleet is retreating. Their ships are powering down and leaving the system. The laboratory erupted in cheers. Students who had been preparing to die minutes before now celebrated their survival. But all eyes remained on Jake Morrison, the human who had just saved them all. Dr. Vexstar approached Jake slowly, silver face showing a mixture of shame and amazement. Mr. Morrison, I owe you an apology. We all do. Jake turned to face his professor, then looked around the room at his classmates. Zeph's crystal body was blazing with excitement, while Prince Kale stood in shocked silence. You've been hiding! This intelligence all along, Director Thane said. Why? Jake took a deep breath. Because I was taught that sometimes the greatest strength comes from being underestimated. But I realize now that some things are more important than strategy. Lucy pushed through the crowd to reach him, tears in her eyes. Jake, what you just did... ... You saved everyone. We saved everyone, Jake corrected her. This was always going to happen eventually. The question was when, not if. As the celebration continued around him, Jake Morrison finally allowed himself to stand straight, to meet the eyes of his classmates without shame. The worst student in the academy had just proven that he might be the smartest person in the room, but he also knew that everything had changed. There would be no going back to his old life of hiding and pretending. Galaxy was about to discover what humans were really capable of, and Jake Morrison was going to be at the center of that revelation. 3 days after the Void Collective attack, Jake Morrison sat in the Academy's main conference room, facing a panel of the galaxy's most important leaders. Representatives from dozens of worlds had arrived to meet the human who had saved the Academy. The room that had once seemed impossibly large now felt too small, with all the attention focused on him. Director Thane sat at the head of the table, flanked by council members from the major galactic civilizations. Dr. Vexstar was there, too. Looking uncomfortable every time he glanced at Jake, the shame on the professor's silver face was obvious to everyone in the room. Mr. Morrison, said Council Prime Valdris, a tall Andromedan with flowing robes, we have reviewed your solution to the Void Collective threat. Our top scientists confirmed that your approach was not only correct, but brilliant. How long have you possessed these capabilities? Jake chose his words carefully. I've been studying advanced subjects since childhood. Council Prime. My father believed it was important for humans to be prepared for contact with other civilizations. And yet you chose to hide these abilities, said another council member. This one, a crystalline similar to Zeph.
Ow.
Why would you deliberately fail your classes? Because humans are still viewed as a primitive species, Jake replied honestly. We were accepted into galactic society, but not as equals. I was taught that revealing our true capabilities too early might be seen as threatening rather than helpful. The room buzzed with quiet conversations in multiple languages. I caught fragments of discussion about human intelligence, the implications of his abilities, and what it might mean for the galaxy's power structure council. Prime Valdris raised a hand for silence. Mr. Morrison, we would like you to examine several problems that have been troubling our greatest minds. Would you be willing to assist us? Of course, Jake said, over the next 2 hours. Jake was presented with challenges that had stumped galactic civilization for decades. An energy crisis affecting the Outer Rim worlds. Navigation problems in the unstable regions near the galactic core. Communication issues between species with incompatible thought patterns. One by one, Jake provided solutions, not just partial answers or theories, but complete, workable solutions that could be implemented immediately. The council members grew more amazed with each problem he solved. The energy crisis in the Kepler sector, Jake explained. Drawing diagrams on the room's holographic display exists because you're using outdated conversion methods. If you modify the stellar collectors to work in parallel rather than series, you can increase efficiency by 200%. The navigation problems near the core are caused by gravitational interference. He continued, moving to the next challenge. But if you map the interference patterns instead of trying to avoid them, you can use them to accelerate travel. Think of it like surfing on gravitational waves. Each solution he offered was elegant and practical. The council members looked at each other with expressions ranging from amazement to worry. Mr. Morrison, Council Prime Valdris said slowly, are other humans capable of this level of analysis? Jake hesitated. He thought about his father's instructions about the plan to keep human abilities secret. But he also thought about the good these solutions could do, the lives they could save and improve. Some are, he admitted. We've been preparing for this moment for generations. The silence that followed was heavy with implications. Jake could see the council members processing what this meant. Humanity wasn't just another member species. They were potentially the most intelligent species in the galaxy. After the council meeting ended, Jake walked through the academy hallways that had once felt so hostile. Now students stopped him constantly, asking questions and seeking his help. With their studies, the change was overwhelming. Jake, Zeph called out, his crystal body bright with excitement. I've been looking everywhere for you. A quantum mechanics professor wants to meet with you. She says your approach two-dimensional theory could revolutionize the field. Jake smiled at his roommate. Zeph, I owe you an apology. You spent so much time trying to help me and I couldn't tell you the truth. Are you kidding? Zeph's light pulsed happily. I'm just amazed I was friends with a genius and didn't know it. Can you help me with my advanced physics homework? Of course, Jake laughed. But maybe we should start with intermediate physics first. In his next class, Jake experienced something he had never felt before at the academy. Dr. Vextar stood at the front of the room. But instead of lecturing, he was asking Jake questions about theoretical applications. Mr. Morrison, the professor said, his tone completely different from before, could you explain your thoughts on temporal mechanics? Our current understanding seems limited compared to your analysis. Jake stood up, feeling strange to be the center of positive attention in a classroom. The problem with current temporal theory is that it assumes time is linear. But if you consider time as a multi-dimensional construct, several paradoxes resolve themselves. As he explained his theories, Jake saw his classmates listening with genuine interest and respect. Prince Kale, who had mocked him for months, was taking careful notes. Alex Nine's optical sensors were focused entirely on Jake's explanations. After class, Prince Kale approached him. Maurice and I owe you an apology. My behavior toward you is unacceptable. Thank you, Kale, Jake said, but you only acted on the information you had. I was the one hiding the truth. Still, Kale said, I should have been more respectful. Would you be willing to work with me on my strategic analysis project? I think your perspective could be valuable. Over the following weeks, Jake's life changed completely. He was invited to guest lecture in advanced classes. Professors consulted him on their research projects. Most importantly, the Galactic Council officially requested that he become a special advisor on human affairs. Lucy found him one evening in their favorite study area, working on a project for the Academy's research division. How are you handling all this attention? She asked, sitting down beside him. It's strange, Jake admitted. For so long, I dreamed of being able to show what I was really capable of. But now that it's happened, I keep thinking about my father's warnings. What warnings? He always said. That being underestimated was a form of protection. Now that the galaxy knows what humans can do, we're not protected anymore. We're players in the game. Lucy nodded thoughtfully. But maybe that's not a bad thing. Look at what you've accomplished. In just a few weeks, your solutions are helping millions of people across the galaxy. Jake looked at the equations on his screen, then at the messages from grateful worlds that had implemented his solutions. You're right. I spent so much time hiding that I forgot the real purpose of intelligence. It's not meant to be hoarded. It's meant to be shared. The next day, Jake received an offer that would change everything. The Academy wanted him to become their youngest professor ever, teaching a new course on alternative problem-solving methods. The class would focus on human approaches to complex problems, Director Thane explained during their meeting. We believe that your species' unique perspective could benefit students from across the galaxy. Jake accepted the position, but with one condition. He wanted to establish an exchange program that would bring more humans to the Academy, allowing them to share their knowledge openly. As he prepared for his first lecture, Jake thought about the journey that had brought him here. From the worst student in his class to the Academy's youngest professor. From hiding his abilities to sharing them with the galaxy, his first students filed into the classroom, representing dozens of species from across known space. They looked at him with curiosity and respect, waiting to learn from the human who had changed everything. Welcome to Alternative Problem-Solving Methods, Jake began, his voice confident and clear. Today we're going to explore how different perspectives can unlock solutions to seemingly impossible challenges. As he began his lecture, Jake reflected on his father's teachings. Colonel Morrison had been right about the importance of timing and strategy, but he had also taught Jake something even more valuable. That true strength comes not from hiding your abilities, but from knowing when and how to use them for the greater good. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity's greatest gift wasn't their intelligence alone, but their willingness to share that intelligence with others. And Jake Morrison was going to make sure they never forgot that lesson.